What's going on, fight fans? It's Nick Picks, and this is going to be your breakdown for UFC Fight Night, Nicolau versus Alex Perez. So we'll start with the prelims, and I'm going to go through the prelims kind of fast here. There's a 7-fight prelim card, and honestly, a lot of fighters that maybe you've never heard of. There's a couple of veterans on this one, and I'm going to go through and discuss it for you. The first fight, we have Maheshate versus Gabriel Mogli Benetiz. For those of you that watch fights, Mogli Benetiz is a longtime UFC vet. He's got 7 wins in the organization, along with 7 losses. Trains an American top team with Javier Mendez, and one of the things with him is that he always threw the hardest leg kick at American top team from Javier Mendez. He's a good veteran. He's going up against Maheshate, a 6'1" fighter. For the weight class, a big featherweight. This guy has shown that he has knockout power. He has a knockout win over Steve Garcia. In his recent form, he lost via TKO to Slavaklaus, Vyacheslav Borshev. When I see this fight playing out, I think Maheshate's range is going to be a lot for Mogli to handle. If Mogli can get inside and make it a dirty fight, it's going to be a lot more interesting. But if I had to pick, I'd go Maheshate decision. Second fight we have is Ivana Petrovic versus Na Liang. Na Liang is 19-7, 0-3 in the UFC, with a recent loss being a TKO loss to JJ Aldridge, who has no TKO finishes other than Na Liang. Na Liang is, in my opinion, one of the worst female fighters on the UFC roster. She's 0-3. She's been finished every single time. All of her wins pre-UFC were first-round submissions versus people with sub-500 records. Ivana Petrovic, 0-1, coming off of a loss via decision to Luana Carolina in her debut. I think she has 6 first-round finishes via submission. She's going to go out there and probably take Na Liang's arm off. Third fight of the night, we have James Llontop versus Chris Padilla. Both these guys are making their debut coming off the Contender Series, with Llontop winning via decision, and Chris Padilla not off the Contender Series. His most recent fight was a KO win against former UFC vet Justin James. Padilla, 13-6, really weathered record. I believe he's fought for organizations like Bellator before in the past. So he's been around. James Llontop, 14-2, I believe, fighting out of Peru, has that Peruvian fighting spirit. Going to be a dog. I think my money's on Llontop here by knockout. Fight number 4, we have Souza versus Mann. And, I mean, this one should be pretty self-explanatory. Mann is an atomweight, which for those of you who don't know is 105-pound division. She will be fighting at 115 pounds, which is strawweight, versus Souza. Souza 0-1 in the UFC, lost via knee bar to Karine Silva, who we see later in the card. I think Souza is going to get this done versus Mann. I think Mann's frankly just outgunned here. 6-2 record, 0-1 in the UFC. I don't think she has the skill level to be competitive in the UFC, unfortunately. Fight number 5, Don'Tale Mayes versus Kai Machado. This is a really good fight for the big guys. These are 2 big light heavyweight dudes that are agile for their size. Don'Tale Mayes, 3-4 in the UFC. Kai Machado, 0-1 in the UFC. Don'Tale Mayes is a long, rangy striker, and I think he's pretty streaky. So he can have his nights where he looks really good, and he has other nights where he doesn't really show up. Kai Machado lost his last fight to Mick Parkin, which is a decision. He got grappled, he got taken down, he got pummeled. I don't know if Don'Tale Mayes is going to have that same game plan. Coming from Jackson Wink, he could definitely grapple, take him down, and do the same thing that Mick Parkin did to him. I think this is going to be a good fight, competitive fight. I would like to think that this fight's going to be over 1.5 for the big boys. Probably going to go to a decision. Fight number 6, we got Austin Hubbard versus Michael Figlak. Austin Hubbard, 3-5 in the UFC, 15-7 record overall. Recently coming off of the Ultimate Fighter finale loss to Kurt Holloway, where he lost via submission, I believe, in the second round. Austin Hubbard was my favorite winning that season of the Ultimate Fighter. I thought he's a really well-rounded fighter, and a lot of the guys in the house couldn't really compete with him skill for skill. This fight, he's coming up against Michael Figlak. Michael Figlak's 0-1 in the UFC, his only fight being a decision loss to Firas Ziem. I thought Figlak looked good in that fight. He lost the first 2 rounds pretty convincingly to Ferocium. Attribute a lot of that to first time being in the octagon. But the 3rd round, you could see he flipped that switch, and he definitely had that dog, and he almost came back in that fight. I think this is going to be a really, really good fight. I'd like to say that this one has a chance to be your fight of the night, but we'll see. I think both guys are going to come out. There's going to be a technical, high-level fight, and I'd also say this fight probably goes to the decision. Both these guys are really tough. We'll see what happens. And then for the last fight on the prelims, we have Ronnie Yahya taking on Victor Le Mengosa Henry. Both these guys have been around a long time. Victor Henry has a lot of fights, not in the UFC, but he's been around plenty of other organizations, 2-1-1 in the UFC. His most recent fight ended in a no contest due to a nut shot versus Farid Basharat. Mengosa is a very, very, very all-around well-handled competitor. Facing up against Ronnie Yahya, and we all know Ronnie Yahya. He's 39 years old. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. His most recent fight, he got knocked out by Montel Jackson, and he hasn't won a fight in 4 years. So I'll let you guys decide. There's a very active fighter versus a 39-year-old who has one path to victory, and that's grappling. I think we both know who's going to win this one. So that brings it to the end for the prelims. We'll take you over to the main card now. So for the first fight of the main card, we've got the Dirty Bird, Tim Means, taking on Uros, the Dr. Medic. A lot of you guys might not know Uros Medic. I think this is a phenomenal fight to start the main card. Uros Medic is a very aggressive fighter. His most recent fight, he lost to Maribek Oribal, by neck crank, but he showed a lot of gut and dog in that fight. He brought the fight to Olubov, and even before that, he's shown in his past 5 that he can string together some wins. He's been between lightweight and welterweight. This is going to be a welterweight fight, which I think suits his frame better. He's 6'1". For lightweight, it's a big frame, but he fills out very well at welterweight. He's taking on the vet Tim Means, 15-12-1 in the UFC. That guy has a lot of fights. And one thing we know about Tim Means, he's never going to back down away from a fight. I think these two guys are going to clash right in the middle of the octagon from the bell. And I like Uros Medic here. I like him with the early finish. We'll see if Tim Means can prove me wrong. Second fight of the main card, we've got Jonathan Pearce versus David Onama. Jonathan Pearce is a product of the MMA lab in Arizona, I believe, trained with Sean and Tim before. He's going to be fighting David Onama. David Onama trains, I believe, or used to train with James Krause, not anymore. But David Onama is one of those guys where he hurts people with his hands. His power is just crazy for that featherweight division. Showed that off in his last fight with a win versus Gabriel Santos. That was a fight where he got hurt, Santos got hurt. I believe that was fight of the night. Unbelievable fight. David Onama has that dog, he has that heart, he has that power in his hands. And going against Jonathan Pearce coming off of a ninja choke loss to Joe Anderson Brito, that just broke his streak, I believe, of 4 or 5 straight wins. He's going to be really looking to get that one back. I remember with that fight, Brito was losing that fight, lost the first 2 rounds, and then clipped Jonathan Pearce and caught him in a ninja choke near the end. Pearce was definitely looking to win keep his win streak going. Now he's got a tough fight in David Onama. I don't know how this one's going to play out. If I had to bet, I'd say this one doesn't go to the scorecards. Fight number 3 on the main card, we got Janata Diniz versus Austin Lane. This one's straight up. This one's a heavyweight filler here. We've got an undefeated 6-0 Brazilian knockout specialist. No fights in the UFC. All of his fights are first-round knockout versus Austin Lane, who is 0-1-1, 0-2, some might say, in the UFC. Both KO losses coming to Justin Tafa. I think this one's pretty simple, straightforward. You've got a finisher versus a guy that gets finished. I think Diniz round 1 knockout. The 4th fight on the main card, we've got Karine Silva versus Ariane Lipski. I think this is your sleeper fight of the night here. We've got 2 female fighters that are finishers in a weight class where there isn't a lot of finishing. Karine Silva is coming off 3 straight wins in the UFC, all 3 coming by first-round submission. Her most recent victory was a guillotine choke versus Marina Moroz in the last round, second of the round. She's really strong for the females. She's got a huge frame, strong body, and she's going up against a veteran in Ariane Lipski, who's also coming off of a great form as well in her own, coming off a submission victory where she tore Casey O'Neal's arm off, which was a huge win. She was a gigantic underdog, and now she's going to be a pretty big underdog again going into the fight against Karine Silva. I think Karine Silva's size and strength is going to be the difference maker in this fight. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go Karine Silva, but I'm going to take the over 1.5 rounds. I think both these girls being finishers isn't going to translate over well. I think the over might be the nice bet right there. That brings us to the co-main event, which is Ryan Superman Spann versus Bogdan Guskov. This one is a very slept-on fight. You've got two guys with the ability to make crazy finishes happen tomorrow night. Ryan Spann coming off of 2 straight losses, a split decision to Lionheart in his last loss. He's trying to get that one back versus Bogdan Guskov, who Bogdan Guskov started his UFC career with a loss versus Volkan Oezdemir, but his second fight, his most recent fight, was a KO victory over Zach Pauga in the first 3 minutes of the fight. And if you watch that fight, you could tell this guy has hands for days. And his combos are very technical. And I really like this fight. I think this is going to be a first-round finish either way. Whoever lands first and lands cleaner is going to get the job down, and I'm excited to see who does it. Which brings us to the main event, which is number 5 ranked Matheus Nicolau versus number 8 ranked Alex Perez. This is a good fight. For the casuals will say a flyweight fight. These guys aren't that well known for flyweights. For me, a hardcore, Matheus Nicolau is a badass fighter. He's a 7-2 record in the UFC. His only losses being to Brandon Royval and Dustin Ortiz, both guys that carry very good power for the flyweight division. I wouldn't necessarily say he's chinny, but if a flyweight has power, they have the ability to knock him out, just based off of the history. He's going against Alex Perez, who is one of those guys at flyweight that carry a lot of power. Alex Perez, tough string recently. He's coming off 3 straight losses. I don't believe he's won a fight in over 3 or 4 years now. I think they're just trying to get him out of the top 10 with this one. I like Matheus Nicolau over 5 rounds. I think his cardio will be there. Alex Perez has shown the ability to gas in fights that go longer. I think Matheus Nicolau is a very well-rounded fighter. And other than the puncher's chance for Alex Perez, I really think Matheus Nicolau dominates everywhere in this fight. I would take Matheus Nicolau moneyline. I think that's your safest bet of the night, guys. Thank you for listening. That was my UFC Fight Night overview and breakdown. Join me next week. Thanks.